One subject I discuss frequently on my channel is toxic work environments. And if you haven't noticed, there are eerie parallels between cults and toxic work environments or toxic bosses. While one may seem extreme and the other rather mundane, the underlying mechanisms share striking similarities. In today's video, I'm again delving into the unsettling world where manipulation, control, and toxicity reign supreme, discussing the striking similarities between cults and toxicity in the workplace. I'm Jo Banks. I've been a professional executive business coach for 15 years, and I'm sharing what I know. If you've been following my channel or other social media content, you will know that I have a vested interest in all things narcissism, bullying, and toxic work environments. Not only was I brought up in a narcissistic household, but I've also undergone extreme workplace bullying myself in the past. And I now work with coaches, therapists, leaders, and HR professionals, as well as one-to-one coaching clients, teaching them as much as I know about the topic. However, one thing I haven't shared is that I'm also fascinated by cults. I devour any cult content I can get my hands on. And while I haven't discussed it at all in any of my previous content, the parallels between cults and workplace toxicity are hard to ignore. Think about it. Imagine a place where dissent is discouraged, individuality is suppressed, and blind allegiance is demanded. This description fits both cults and toxic work environments. In both scenarios, leaders wield disproportionate power, exploiting the vulnerabilities of their followers or employees for personal gain. So I want to explore these parallels to shed light on the insidious nature of manipulation in seemingly unrelated settings. Starting first with charismatic leaders. Cults often revolve around charismatic leaders who possess an aura of authority and charm. Similarly, toxic work environments can be perpetuated by bosses with magnetic personalities who use their charm to manipulate and control their employees and literally everybody around them. These leaders often employ charisma to mask their toxic behavior, luring unwitting individuals into their web of influence. Manipulative tactics. Both cult leaders and toxic bosses are adept at manipulation. They use various tactics to maintain control over their followers or employees. Gaslighting, a technique commonly associated with cults, is also prevalent in toxic work environments. I've talked at length in another video about gaslighting in the workplace and how to combat it. I'll leave the link below. Another highly manipulative tactic often used, especially by covert narcissists in a cult or in a workplace, is DARVO, the DARVO technique: deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. This is a technique where if confronted about their behavior, a narcissist will deny that they've done anything wrong, launch a counter attack on their victim, and present themselves as the true victim. Again, I have 2 videos on DARVO. The links will be below. As a result of these very common types of behavior, manipulative behavior, employees or cult members may find themselves doubting their perceptions or reality due to the constant manipulation and psychological warfare. This can be extremely damaging, and the after effects can be long-lasting, with many victims even questioning their sanity. Isolation and dependency. Cults thrive on isolating members from external influences to maintain control. They will actively separate them from their friends and family, making it impossible for the new members to make contact with their friends and family. If they do, they may suffer extreme consequences with threats that they'll be banished from the group. I've talked about how rejection or abandonment, which is what banishment is, affects the same part of the brain as physical pain in a previous video. Again, the link will be below, lots of links below on this one. So people will do anything to avoid the pain of rejection or banishment because we feel it as a physical pain, and therefore they will comply with even the most severe isolation. To be honest, it's one of the first things that a cult will do: separate people from what they know. It makes the indoctrination far easier to complete when there's no concerned family member or friend expressing their concerns. Narcissists do this in personal relationships too. They will slowly distance their partner from friends or family. Typically, they will alienate them by either behaving badly when they meet the friends and family or saying to their victim how much they dislike the friends and family, so the victim slowly pulls away to avoid inevitable conflict. Every client I've ever worked with who has been subjected to narcissistic bullying with a partner ends up with no friends and few family members because the narcissist has made sure of it. The narcissist wants the victim to depend solely on them. Similarly, toxic work environments foster a sense of isolation amongst employees, cutting them off from support networks and fostering dependency on the leader or the organization. Whatever the situation, this isolation makes it easier for the leader or the boss to exert influence and control over their followers or employees. I definitely see this all the time in narcissistic bullying. The narcissist will even isolate an individual from the rest of their team, making them feel alone and unworthy of being part of the wider group. It's all about control. As a result, the victim may begin to question their abilities, their skills, their experience. Their confidence, self-worth, and self-esteem become eroded to the point that they believe they're useless and would be unable to get a job elsewhere, especially at the same level and with the same pay. Again, a common manipulation tactic that I see often and have even gone through myself. Exploitation and abuse. Both cults and toxic work environments often involve exploitation and abuse. In cults, this may manifest as physical, emotional, financial, or even sexual abuse inflicted upon members by the leader or other members. In toxic work environments, exploitation can take the form of overwork, harassment, or unfair treatment by the boss or management, or even unfair expectations. Employees may feel powerless to speak out against such abuse due to fear of retaliation or ostracization. Groupthink and conformity. Cults rely on groupthink and conformity to maintain cohesion among their members. Dissent is discouraged and individuals are pressured to adhere to the group's beliefs and practices unquestioningly. Similarly, toxic work environments promote a culture of conformity also, where employees are expected to toe the line and suppress any dissenting opinions. This stifles creativity and innovation, leading to stagnation within the organization. Financial exploitation. In cults, members are often financially exploited and coerced into donating large sums of money to the organization or leader under the guise of spiritual enlightenment or salvation. Similarly, Toxic work environments may engage in financial exploitation, such as withholding wages, imposing arbitrary fines, or pressuring employees to make unnecessary purchases. They may also require the employee to work excessive hours with no extra pay or time off in lieu. They may expect employees to pay for their own uniforms or protective equipment necessary for health and safety reasons. They may expect you to pay for but not receive reimbursement for travel expenses when you're out on company business. I've seen all of these in my previous 20-year HR career. This financial exploitation further entrenches individuals in a toxic environment, making it difficult for them to break free. The narcissistic abuse cycle. I've spoken about the narcissistic abuse cycle in a previous video. Again, link will be below. This cycle of abuse can be seen everywhere a narcissist is, in our personal, work, or cult environments. Recognizing the cycle is, in fact, one of the best ways to identify that you're in a toxic relationship, whatever the environment. So let's take a quick overview of it. In phase 1 of the narcissistic cycle of abuse, we have the lovebombing phase. In a cult, the narcissist or the cult members flood the new potential members with attention, affection, telling them how wonderful they are and how amazing they think they are. In a work context, the same thing can happen. The narcissist very cleverly aligns themselves with the victim, and the victim feels an almost instant affinity with them, and so they let their guard down. During the lovebombing phase, regardless of the environment, the narcissist is aligning with the victim, usually through mimicking their likes and dislikes, which are typically lies when you start to unpick them. What they're actually doing is what we call data mining. In other words, they get the person to let their guard down so that they share information about themselves with the narcissist that they will then store and use against the victim at a later date. Sounds too incredible to be true, but trust me, it happens all the time. This is so powerful because it creates huge deposits of dopamine, the reward chemical, and oxytocin, the love hormone, making the person feel amazing and like they've found their soulmate, whether it's in a cult or whether it's, their soul boss, doesn't matter. It's such a euphoric feeling that people don't realize the motivations behind it. Next, we have the devaluation phase. This is the second phase where the trauma bond is created in cults and in other relationships. It typically starts slowly with one small put down, or the victim being asked to do something outside their comfort zone and against their innate values. This toing and froing of the love bombing and devaluation, which escalates, creates a powerful mix of biochemicals that lead to what we call trauma bonding, which is incidentally why a lot of people find it almost impossible to leave. Victims will fluctuate between oxytocin and dopamine when the person still is doing some nice things, and cortisol and adrenaline. Literally toing and froing and never being in a calm state, always having that heightened awareness. However, as I've already said, the devaluation always escalates, leaving the victim desperate for a small morsel of love-bombing hormones, oxytocin and dopamine. The same thing happens at work too. Over time, the victim's devaluation gets worse and worse until they become a shadow of their former selves. You might ask, well, why wouldn't you just leave? The answer to that is this does not happen all at once. It's a slow process. It's a drip, 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 drip that you just don't notice, and it can last for years, the devaluation phase. It's not always really immediately obvious. Typically, During prolonged devaluation, the victim no longer has a sense of self. They feel worthless and completely incapable, making it incredibly difficult to look for another job and to leave. In a cult, victims probably don't have or think they don't have anybody to go home to, and so they're trapped. The discard phase. From a cult perspective, the discard phase takes place when the narcissist is bored or when the victim has done something to upset them. They may banish them from the group, send them off overseas, or make them do some sort of amends program. In a work environment, it's virtually the same. The narcissist has typically worn down their victim to the point that they no longer present a challenge, and so they aren't getting enough of what we call narcissistic supply from them. They'll banish them to another project, stop talking to them, and miss them out on important communications. They'll literally try to make their life as difficult as possible. The final phase, phase 4, is the Hoover phase. In a cult, this will typically happen when a member decides to leave or has actually managed to leave. This is just not acceptable to the narcissist, as it means that they've lost control and power, which is everything that drives a narcissist. During this phase, the cult member will be promised all sorts of amazing things. Things will change. They've got a big part in the future. We call this future faking. Empty promises that are used to lure the person back into the cult so that they will come back and agree to stay. In a work environment, typically this phase begins when the victim tells somebody in authority, raises a grievance, or indeed resigns. Again, the narcissist has lost control at this point and will do whatever it takes to rectify the situation and regain the power and control. Again, the narcissist has lost control and power at this point, and that will never do. So the narcissist will go about literally doing damage limitation, and that begins with the future faking, promising promotions, new projects, pay rises, etc. Then the whole abuse cycle starts again and keeps repeating. However, from the second cycle onwards, the love bombing phase will always be much shorter. The psychological impact. Both cults and toxic work environments can have severe psychological impact on their victims. Individuals may experience anxiety, depression, PTSD, and other mental health issues as a result of the ongoing manipulation, abuse, and trauma that they've endured. Breaking free from such environments requires immense courage and support, as individuals may struggle with feelings of guilt, shame, and worthlessness. Education here is critical. Unless you know about narcissistic abuse, you will think it's you, whether you're in a cult, being bullied at work, or in a personal narcissistic relationship. This is one of the main reasons why I put so much content out on this topic. I want to raise awareness, and I hope you'll help me too by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing my videos so that we together can get this information out to as many people as possible. Forewarned, forearmed. The wrap up. The parallels between cult dynamics and toxic work environments or toxic bosses are undeniable. Both involve narcissism. Both involve charismatic leaders who manipulate and exploit their followers or employees for personal gain. They rely on tactics such as isolation, dependency, and abuse to maintain control and suppress dissent. And they all follow the narcissistic abuse cycle. Recognizing these parallels is crucial for identifying and addressing toxic behavior in all its forms, whether it occurs in the confines of a cult or a workplace. By shedding light on these insidious dynamics, we can strive to create healthier and more respectful environments where individuals can thrive, free from manipulation and coercion. What next? If you have any words of wisdom on this topic or any questions you'd like me to answer, please leave them in the comment section below. I really do love interacting with you all. And if you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. When you subscribe, it says to YouTube that my content is useful and interesting, and they'll push it out to more people. So it really does make a big difference. Finally, as always, a huge thank you to everybody who stays until the very end, and a massive thank you for all your support. It really does mean the world to me.